My name is Emma Carter, and I'm 37 years old. 20 years ago, my parents called me a disgrace and threw me out of their house like I was nothing. Today, those same people stood in the marble lobby of Riverstone Memorial Hospital in downtown Chicago, demanding to meet the world-renowned heart surgeon they'd seen on TV. My son, Dr. Ethan Carter. They came dressed like royalty, my mother clutching her Burberry trench like armor, my father checking his Rolex every 5 seconds, hoping to impress the very grandson they had once erased. But they had no idea what was waiting for them, in the will of the woman who saved me when they wouldn't. Before I tell you their final karma, please take a few seconds to like and subscribe to this channel, only if you believe in stories where justice finally comes full circle. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is, because I really do read every comment. Now then, let me take you back, to that October night in 2005, when my whole world collapsed. I was 17, sitting in my parents' living room, the one with imported marble floors and a chandelier that could blind you, holding a positive pregnancy test in my trembling hands. My mother, Catherine Carter, spoke first. "You're lying," she hissed, her voice like broken glass. "No daughter of mine would be so ordinary." But the second test confirmed it, and the third one did too. My father didn't shout. That would have been too emotional for him. He simply walked to my room, opened my closet, and came back with my suitcase, the one they bought for my college tours. He set it by the front door. "You have 10 minutes, he said, adjusting his Yale class ring. "Take what fits. Leave your house key on the table." "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You're not our daughter anymore." He turned the family portrait on the mantel face down, the one where we wore matching white shirts and fake smiles. My mother stood near the grand piano, examining her manicure. "Don't call us. Don't come back. We'll tell everyone you're studying abroad." And just like that, I was gone. The boy, Ryan Blake, the one who'd sworn he loved me forever, had already been accepted to Stanford. His parents had lawyers, connections, a reputation to protect. He blocked my number the moment I told him I was pregnant. I packed what I could, some clothes, a photo of my grandmother, and the $200 I'd been saving for prom. When the door slammed behind me, it wasn't just the sound of rejection, it was the sound of my entire identity shattering. That night, I slept in Grant Park, under the gazebo where Ryan had first kissed me. I thought maybe I'd freeze to death, and honestly, part of me didn't care. I woke up to someone gently shaking my shoulder. Not a cop, not a stranger looking for trouble, a woman in her 60s wearing a gray wool coat and a soft smile. "Sweetheart, you're going to freeze out here," she said. That was the first time I heard Victoria Moore's voice. She had been walking her elderly poodle, Winston, at dawn, something she'd done every morning since her husband died. She looked at me, my swollen eyes, my cheap backpack, my trembling hands, and something in her broke. Or maybe something healed. "I'm fine," I lied through chattering teeth. "No, you're not." Her gaze dropped to my stomach, barely showing but already telling a story. "How far along?" 8 weeks, I whispered. When I started to cry, really cry, not the quiet, polite tears I'd been holding back, she sat beside me on that cold bench and wrapped her arms around me. "Come on," she said softly. "Winston and I could use some company for breakfast." Her car smelled like lavender and old books. The heated seats felt like heaven. She drove us north, to Lincoln Park, to a brownstone so big it could have been a boutique hotel. "I lost my daughter," she said quietly, leading me inside. She was pregnant too. A car accident took them both. The room she showed me had been prepared, not for me, but for someone. There was a crib in the corner, still wrapped in plastic. Maternity clothes with tags still on hung neatly in the closet. "This is yours now," she said. "No questions, no conditions. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at a photo on the dresser, a young woman with her same green eyes. "Because my daughter would have wanted me to." That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in days. Winston curled up at my feet like a guardian, and for the first time since my parents slammed that door, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Safety. Victoria didn't just give me a roof. She gave me a reason to breathe. While my parents told their country club friends I was studying in London, I was washing dishes in Victoria's kitchen, learning about loyalty, dignity, and hard work. She owned 3 restaurants, Moore's on Michigan Avenue, the Velvet Spoon, and the Terrace Cafe near Northwestern University. She started me as a hostess, then a cashier, then a trainee manager. "You're not just working here, Emma," she said one night, watching me balance the books. "You're learning how to build an empire." When Ethan was born, on a snowy night in February, Victoria held my hand through 16 hours of labor. She whispered strength into my ear when I had none left. When he came into the world, she cut the cord herself. "He's brilliant," she said, looking into his newborn eyes. "I can see it already." And she was right. Ethan walked at 9 months. Read at 3-year-old. By 5, he was correcting the waiter's math at Moore's. While I studied for my GED at night, Ethan absorbed the world like it was oxygen. Victoria would say, "He's proof that love, not blood, builds family." And she lived by that. Over the next 2 decades, everything changed. But nothing truly did. Victoria became my mother in every way that mattered. Ethan grew into a prodigy, eventually getting early admission to Harvard Medical School. I still remember the day the acceptance letter came. I cried, not because I was sad, but because I knew the girl who once slept on a park bench had just raised a Harvard doctor. Years later, Ethan made national news. 25-year-old surgeon becomes youngest chief of cardiac surgery in Illinois. His photo was everywhere. Surgical scrubs, confident smile, proud eyes, and with it came the ghosts. That morning, my restaurant email inbox pinged. Subject, from your parents. Inside was a message from Carter and Associates, their corporate email. Dear Emma, we recently learned of Ethan's incredible achievements. As his grandparents, we believe it's time to reconnect. Families should always stay together. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. Family? They threw me away like trash. When Daniel Brooks, Victoria's lawyer and longtime friend, found me sitting in my office shaking, I told him what happened. They want him now that he's successful, I said bitterly. He nodded. Then we'll make sure they regret it. And as he spoke, I realized this wasn't just my story anymore. It was Victoria's, Ethan's, ours. And karma was finally coming full circle. It started with an email, then came the phone calls, then came the gifts. Within a week of Ethan's story going viral, my parents, Charles and Catherine Carter, had transformed from ghosts of my trauma into relentless visitors of my present. It began subtly. A flower delivery to Moore's on Michigan Avenue, the restaurant I'd inherited from Victoria. The card said, "Congratulations, Dr. Carter, from your loving grandparents." Ethan brought it home that night, confused. "Mom, did you tell anyone I work at Riverstone?" I froze. "Why?" He handed me the card. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's perfect loops, the same ones that had once signed me out of their lives. My hands trembled as I read it. The words looked elegant, but all I saw was 20 years of absence. "Return it," I said quietly. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked. "They're just flowers." "No," I whispered. "They're bait." A few nights later, they showed up in person, at the Velvet Spoon. They'd made a reservation under fake names, but I recognized my mother's emerald earrings the second she walked in. I was greeting customers when she turned to me with that same polished smile she used at charity galas. "Emma," she said, like she was greeting a long-lost friend, not the daughter she'd exiled. My father sat across from her, menu unopened. "We need to talk about Ethan," he said flatly. "You need to leave," I replied. The restaurant went silent. Even the jazz music seemed to pause. "Please don't make a scene," my mother whispered, as if she hadn't made a scene out of my life 2 decades ago. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You made your choice 20 years ago, I said. Stick to it. They left, but their silence was short-lived. Soon after, packages started arriving at Riverstone Memorial Hospital, addressed directly to Dr. Ethan Carter. A Rolex, a Mont Blanc pen, a first-edition medical textbook worth thousands, each one signed, Your proud grandparents. Ethan came home holding one of the boxes. Mom, who are these people? Should I be worried? My throat tightened. Return them, all of them. But they know where I work, he said quietly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the empty restaurant, my footsteps echoing on the marble. It was happening again. The same manipulation, the same control. Only this time, they were coming for my son. Then came Ryan Blake, the boy who'd vanished the day I told him I was pregnant. Now a man, older, slicker, broke. He called at 2 a.m. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won over disgust. Emma, he said softly, it's me. 20 years, and he still thought it's me meant something. What do you want, Ryan? I saw the news about Ethan. He's brilliant. He paused. Our son. The words felt like poison. You don't get to say our. Not after what you did. I was a kid, he said quickly. My parents threatened to cut you off, make you homeless? Welcome to my side of the story. He went quiet. Then his voice turned small. I just want to know him. I lost everything. My company, my marriage. I want a chance to make things right. I almost hung up until he said the next part. Your parents reached out to me. They think I can help. They want to rebuild the family, and they're offering me compensation to convince you. Compensation, I repeated, my voice icy. He didn't answer. That was all I needed to hear. The next morning, I walked into Daniel's office with my phone still shaking in my hand. They're working together, I said, my parents and Ryan. They're trying to buy their way into Ethan's life. Daniel listened, jaw tightening. Good, he said finally. Good? I snapped. They're manipulating us. Exactly, which means they're leaving evidence. He leaned back, eyes sharp. Forward everything. Calls, messages, emails. If they want a war, they've just declared one on paper. That night, Daniel went through Victoria's old files. She'd left detailed legal provisions, just in case this ever happened. Victoria saw this coming, he said quietly, pulling out a folder labeled Carter Contingency. Inside were copies of the documents my parents had signed 20 years ago. Legal relinquishment of all parental rights and responsibilities. Not just to me, but to any of my future children. It was their signature, bold and permanent. Their way of saying I didn't exist. And now, it was the weapon that could destroy everything they were trying to reclaim. When direct manipulation failed, they changed tactics. They went public. It started with a local interview on Chicago Channel 7. The segment opened with my parents standing in front of the hospital pretending to cry. 20 years ago, we made a terrible mistake, my mother said dramatically. We've been trying to make amends ever since. The reporter asked, And your daughter? She's hurt. But we forgive her, my mother said, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Forgive me? For what? Surviving? By the time I saw the clip, it had 100,000 views on their Facebook page. The comments were brutal. Family is everything. She should let them see their grandson. So selfish. Daniel watched the footage beside me, expression unreadable. They just made their biggest mistake, he said. How? They admitted guilt, on camera. And you have documents proving it wasn't just a mistake, it was abandonment, he paused. If they want the spotlight, we'll give it to them. But this time, on our terms. It didn't take long for the pressure to reach the hospital board. Dr. Morrison, the chief administrator, called Ethan into his office. "Ethan, this situation with your grandparents, it's complicated," he said carefully. "They've been generous donors for years. The board is concerned about optics." "Optics?" Ethan repeated, incredulous. "You're worried about optics?" Dr. Morrison sighed. Perhaps a supervised meeting would help. Ethan came home furious. "They're threatening my position if I don't talk to them." I looked at Daniel. "They're using influence now." He nodded. "Let them. The higher they climb, the harder the fall." But it wasn't just professional pressure. At Moore's, customers whispered behind their menus. She should forgive them. 20 years is a long time. Even some of my staff muttered that I was holding a grudge. A grudge, as if being disowned while pregnant was the same as a family argument over Thanksgiving dinner. One evening, Ethan came home exhausted, still in scrubs. He dropped onto the couch, rubbing his temples. "Mom," he said quietly, "maybe I should just meet them once. Tell them to leave us alone." I froze. "Ethan, you don't understand what they did." "Then tell me," he said. His voice wasn't angry, it was steady, surgical. He wanted facts, not protection. So I told him. About the night I was kicked out. About Ryan. About Victoria. About the documents. He sat there in silence, the weight of 20 years settling between us. Then he said, "Can I see them?" Daniel handed him the folder. Ethan opened it carefully, reading every line. "We, Charles and Catherine Carter, hereby relinquish all parental rights and responsibilities to Emma Carter and any children born or unborn." He blinked slowly. "They signed this before I was even born?" "Yes." "And this line, in perpetuity, means forever?" Daniel nodded. "Legally irreversible." Ethan exhaled, his face unreadable. "So they're not my grandparents." "No," I said softly. "They're strangers who share your DNA." He closed the file and set it down gently. "Then it's time the world knew who they really are." A week later, a letter arrived, hand-delivered, embossed with the Carter and Associates seal. Inside, a contract. My father had offered $5 million to establish trust for Ethan Carter's future. In return, they wanted a public reconciliation statement and a family photo for the press. "We want to invest in our legacy," the letter read. "Ethan deserves the Carter name." The irony was almost poetic. That night, Daniel spread the documents across our dining table like evidence in a courtroom. "They're not trying to reconcile," he said. "They're trying to buy back their brand." He pointed to a line near the bottom. "Public appearance required within 30 days. "They're planning something big," I said. He smiled slightly. "So are we." Daniel leaned back in his chair, thinking. "There's one event coming up they won't be able to resist. The Riverstone Memorial Gala." Ethan's face hardened. "I'm giving the keynote that night." "Exactly," Daniel said. "We invite them, publicly. Let them think they've won." I hesitated. "You want them there?" "Yes," he said, "because the only thing stronger than private revenge is public truth." He looked at me. "You said once that Victoria saved your life. This is your chance to honor her and protect every girl she would have saved next." For a long moment I said nothing. Then I whispered, "Let's finish what they started 20 years ago." Daniel nodded, his eyes softening. Then it settled. That night I stood by the window overlooking Chicago, the skyline glittering like 1,000 little lies waiting to be exposed. The same city that once watched me sleep on a park bench would now watch the truth unfold. And somewhere in the distance, I swear I could almost hear Victoria's voice. Calm, resolute, loving. "When the time comes, don't fear the light, Emma. Let it expose everything that once hid in the dark." The storm was coming, and this time I was ready. After 20 years of silence, I thought my parents couldn't hurt me anymore. I was wrong. But this time, I wasn't 17. I wasn't afraid. And I wasn't alone. The week before the Riverstone Memorial Gala, Chicago felt colder than usual. Even the city lights looked sharper, like they were watching me. Every night after closing the restaurant, Daniel and I sat at the dining table surrounded by folders, flash drives, and stacks of old paper, Victoria's paper. Her handwriting filled every page, careful, elegant, decisive. She'd prepared for everything: legal clauses, business transfers, trust documents. She must have known this would happen, I whispered. Daniel looked up. She didn't just hope you'd survive, Emma. She built an entire system to make sure you'd win. He opened a file labeled More Legacy and handed me a note folded in half. It read, "If the Carters ever come for what they threw away, show them the cost of their own signatures." Victoria Moore wrote, "We started digging." Daniel pulled up every email, text, and document from Ryan and my parents' recent communications. What we found wasn't just deceit, it was strategy. My parents had hired Ryan as a consultant through their company, Carter and Associates. The email read, "Mr. Blake, per our discussion, you will receive 10% of any assets recovered through reconciliation with our daughter. Your role, establish paternal connection with EC and leverage maternal cooperation." Ryan's reply made my skin crawl. "Happy to help." Emma always was emotional. If I push the right buttons about missed father-son moments, she'll cave. Daniel exhaled through his teeth. "They put it in writing. That's conspiracy and emotional manipulation, easily admissible." He clicked open another folder. Audio recordings from Victoria's home office. She had recorded every meeting with her legal team before her passing. Her voice filled the room. "If Charles and Catherine ever attempt contact with Emma or Ethan, they are to be shown the signed relinquishment documents and the amended trust clause. No mercy, no negotiation. Family is earned, not inherited." Hearing her voice again broke something inside me. She wasn't just gone. She was still protecting us from beyond the grave. Ethan came home late that night, still in scrubs, exhausted but determined. "How bad is it?" he asked. Daniel handed him the printed emails. Ethan read them slowly, his jaw tightening. "They treated my life like a business transaction." "They always did," I said quietly. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I didn't see the brilliant surgeon or the prodigy. I saw the little boy who used to fix his teddy bear with Band-Aids, now standing tall, defending the woman who gave him everything. "I want to speak at the gala," he said. "You're already the keynote speaker," Daniel reminded him. "No, I mean I want to speak the truth." Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure? Once it's public, there's no going back." Ethan nodded. "Mom spent 20 years paying for their choices. It's time they pay for theirs." 2 nights later, Daniel opened the safe Victoria had left me. The combination was the date of Ethan's birth, 07/22/2006. Inside were deeds, shares, jewelry, and a leather-bound folder sealed with wax. Daniel broke the seal and opened it. Inside were 2 things. The original relinquishment document signed by my parents. A video USB drive labeled "To be played when truth is needed." We watched it together, the 3 of us. Victoria appeared on screen, frail but fierce. Even cancer hadn't dimmed her voice. "If you're watching this," she began, "it means Charles and Catherine Carter have crawled out from under whatever rock they've been hiding beneath. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. You abandoned your daughter for appearances. You disowned your grandchild before he even drew breath. You traded love for reputation. So I'm returning the favor. In writing, forever." She smiled faintly, eyes glinting. "Emma, my darling, they'll come with money, tears, and promises. Don't believe them. You have everything you need. This home, these businesses, this family. They can't touch you. They can't touch what love built." When the video ended, Ethan wiped his eyes. "She was incredible." "She was our miracle," I said softly. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet preparation. Daniel drafted legal responses, filed restraining orders in advance, and sent copies of the documents to the hospital's legal department, ensuring they couldn't be silenced by donor pressure. Ethan rehearsed his speech for the gala, the one he'd written himself. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. At night, I visited Victoria's old restaurant, the Terrace Cafe, now closed for renovations. I sat in her favorite corner booth, surrounded by ghosts of conversations and the faint smell of vanilla cappuccino. That was where she'd taught me how to balance books, how to manage people, and how to rebuild a broken life. I whispered to the empty room, "I hope you're proud of us." When the time came, Daniel helped me draft 3 formal invitations, one to my parents, one to Ryan, and one addressed to the Board of Carter and Associates. Each said the same thing: You are cordially invited to attend the Riverstone Memorial Gala. Formal acknowledgement of inheritance and family estate matters will occur during the keynote presentation. Attendance is requested. They'd see the words inheritance and acknowledgement, and they wouldn't resist. Pride never could. Daniel sealed the envelopes himself, pressing the wax stamps into place. They'll think they've won, he said. Perfect, I replied. Let them come prepared for victory, and leave with the truth. The night before the gala, I found Ethan sitting at his desk, writing something. What's that? I asked. A letter, he said. For them, just in case. He handed it to me. The first line made my throat tighten. To the people who thought DNA made them family, thank you for teaching me what family isn't. He smiled sadly. I don't know if I'll ever send it, but I need them to know they didn't win. I hugged him tightly. You already made sure of that. That afternoon, I drove by my parents' old house for the first time in 20 years. The gate was still there, gold and proud. The same gate that once closed behind me when they told me I had 10 minutes to disappear. I sat across the street, watching the lights flicker inside, wondering if they remembered that night. Probably not. People like them rarely remember the pain they cause, only the image they maintain. But I remembered everything. The rain, the suitcase, the sound of the lock clicking shut. And I realized something powerful. They had exiled me from their house. But I had built a home. Daniel spent the entire day reviewing final documents, coordinating with the hospital's legal counsel, and preparing the visual presentation. Once it starts, there's no stopping it, he said. Good, I replied. It's time for a little sunlight. He smiled. Victoria would call it divine exposure. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into Ethan's room. He was asleep on the couch, speech cards scattered around him. The kid who used to fall asleep reading anatomy books was now preparing to perform emotional surgery on an entire room. I covered him with a blanket and whispered, "You are the reason I never gave up." Then I stood by the window, looking out at Chicago's skyline, the same city that once made me feel invisible, now waiting for the truth I was ready to tell. The next morning, as we were leaving for the gala, Daniel stopped me at the door. Emma, he said softly, are you sure you want to do this? It'll go viral. There's no undoing it. I took a deep breath. When I was 17, they gave me 10 minutes to pack my life into a suitcase. Tonight, I'm giving them 10 minutes to face what they've done. That's justice, not revenge. He smiled. Then let's make Victoria proud. We drove in silence through the streets of Chicago. Snowflakes brushed against the windshield like whispers from the past. The gala would begin in less than 2 hours. Hundreds of guests, cameras, and reporters would be there. And at table 1, right in front of the stage, would sit the people who once erased me from their world. Only this time, I was the one holding the pen that could rewrite the story. The Riverstone Memorial Ballroom glittered like a promise people tell themselves at midnight. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids at every table, waiters in pressed jackets, donors in borrowed halos. The banners read Healing Hearts, Building Futures. And at table 1, exactly where Daniel wanted them, sat the people who once decided I didn't exist. Charles and Catherine Carter, my parents, and Ryan Blake, my past dressed in a tux that didn't fit. I felt the weight of the room the second we walked in. The hum of conversations dimmed, like the air itself was waiting for a verdict. Daniel's hand found mine. Ethan's shoulder brushed mine as he leaned in and whispered, "You ready, Mom?" "Ready," I said, and I meant it. The MC's voice rose over the strings quartet. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, a physician who has reimagined what's possible in cardiac surgery, Dr. Ethan Carter." Applause, cameras, spotlights. My son walked toward the podium, not in a designer suit, but in his hospital scrubs. The uniform he earned by staying awake when other people sleep. The uniform that smells like disinfectant and second chances. The choice wasn't accidental. Ethan believes in symbols. So do I. I glanced at table 1. My mother's smile faltered. My father's jaw clenched. Ryan stared at the stage like he'd misplaced an exit sign. "Good evening," Ethan began, steady as a heartbeat. Tonight we're here to talk about family, legacy, and healing. Not the kind you post online, but the kind that keeps people alive. The room softened. He has that effect. It's not ego, it's gravity. 20 years ago, he continued, a 17-year-old girl found out she was pregnant. When she told her parents, they gave her 10 minutes to pack. 10 minutes to erase her from their story. Chairs creaked, forks paused. Somewhere to my right, a donor's bracelet stopped chiming. She slept on a park bench that week, Ethan said, until a stranger found her at dawn, wrapped her in a gray coat, and told her a truth she'd never heard at home. You deserve a second chance. He didn't point to me. He didn't need to. The room turned like a compass finding north. At table 1, my mother's hand flew to her chest. My father stiffened. Ryan stared at the floral centerpiece, as if it might split open and swallow him. That girl is my mother, Ethan said, and the woman in the gray coat became my grandmother, the only one that title ever fit. Her name was Victoria Moore. There are moments when sound disappears, but you still hear everything. This was one of those. She taught my mother to run a business. She taught me to hold a scalpel. She gave us a home when a locked door tried to convince us we didn't deserve one. The LED wall behind him lit up, Victoria in her favorite corner of the terrace cafe, holding Winston the poodle like a tiny, judgmental cloud. The photo was 20 feet tall. She looked right at us like she was still late for a staff meeting, and everyone else was the problem. And tonight, Ethan said, we honor her legacy, not with whispers or apologies, but with truth. He stepped aside, the music cut, the lights warmed. And there she was, Victoria, in a pre-recorded video we'd taken from the leather-bound folder, frail, fierce, oxygen in her voice. If you're watching this, she said, I'll assume Charles and Catherine Carter have crawled out from under some polished stone and decided to remember the daughter they threw away. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. A ripple swept the room, like the collective gasp people try to hide when they realize the movie is about them. My mother went rigid. My father set his glass down too hard. Ryan's throat bobbed. Victoria smiled. You signed papers to make your shame tidy. You relinquished your rights to Emma Carter, and to avoid any future confusion, to any children she might have. You traded flesh and blood for reputation and thought no one would keep the receipt. A soft, brittle laugh drifted through the tables. Not mean, just true. Victoria's eyes softened. Emma, darling, if they're in the room with you, I want you to remember one thing. Family is earned, not inherited. I chose you, and I choose you still. I didn't realize I was crying until Daniel squeezed my hand, grounding me with that quiet weight of his. Ethan stepped back to the mic. Some people think legacy is about last names. I think it's about who shows up when the world walks away. The LED wall shifted from Victoria's video to a scanned document with embossed seals, the kind that looks official before you even read it. Relinquishment of parental rights and responsibilities. The camera operator, bless whoever trained them, punched in until the signatures filled the screen. Charles Carter, Catherine Carter. Date, October 14th, 2005. The date shimmered, the chandeliers hummed, the silence wasn't empty, it was full of history. From table 1, my father stood. This is outrageous, he barked, voice cracking just enough to betray the performance. You can't. You did, Daniel said, already moving. He didn't raise his voice. He never has to. He carried a slim black folder like a surgeon walking toward a table he's memorized. And it is admissible, certified, and most importantly, yours. He reached the podium, eyes sweeping the room. If Ethan brings gravity, Daniel brings weather, pressure that makes people confess. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, you're looking at the original document the Carters signed to sever their rights to Emma and any children born to her, now or ever. Perpetuity, that means forever. Not until dinner feels awkward, forever. Laughter broke, tight, shocked, grateful laughter. A ballroom full of people who never expected to witness justice and suddenly were. My mother lurched to her feet, her voice shaking. We were frightened parents. She was a child who made a mistake. I felt something inside me uncoil. 20 years of apology I don't owe anyone. I stood without meaning to. My voice carried without a microphone. I made a baby, I said. You made a decision. Heads turned. Phones rose. A reporter from Chicago Channel 7 slid nearer, scenting the moment like rain. You gave me 10 minutes, I continued. You turned my picture face down and called that parenting. You hired my ex to manipulate me with father-son fantasies and called that reconciliation. If it feels humiliating to hear it out loud, imagine living it. Ryan tried the door nearest him. A server stepped in his path with a tray and a look that said not tonight. Daniel clicked the remote. Emails filled the LED wall, names blacked out where they didn't matter, highlighted where they did. From C. Carter at carterassociates.com. 2. R. Blake. Consulting. Subject, consultation agreement. Per our discussion, you will receive 10% of any assets recovered through reconciliation with our daughter. Your role, establish paternal connection with EC and leverage maternal cooperation. Another slide. From rblake.consulting to C. Carter. Happy to help. Emma always was emotional. If I push the right buttons about missed father-son moments, she'll cave. Upfront $250K reasonable for my involvement? The gasp wasn't one sound. It was hundreds layered like a choir that finally found the note. Someone whispered, "My God," and someone else said, "He put it in writing." Daniel smiled without warmth. We found these through legal discovery and recipient disclosure. There is no hacking here. There is only the truth. My father surged forward, red with something beyond anger, exposure. "This is defamation." "It's documentation," Daniel replied. He tapped the folder. "Also, Charles, while you flail, a reminder. You're a signatory on the relinquishment. You know what perpetuity means. Shall I define it for you, or will the room do it?" The room did. Soft, savage laughter rolled over white linens. Ethan stepped back to the mic, not a tremor in his hands. "Mr. Blake," he said, voice surgical. "I've known who you were since I was 15. I looked you up. I watched you build a life where I didn't fit, and I felt nothing. A man named Daniel Brooks taught me what a father looks like. He showed up. You sent invoices." Ryan's lips trembled. "Ethan, I'm done," Ethan said gently. No rage, no satisfaction, just closure. Daniel lifted the folder again. "Now, about money, since your emails were so eager to discuss it." He glanced at the board members, donors, cameras, the ecosystem my parents worshipped. Victoria Moore's will includes a clause. It stipulates that any biological family who abandoned Emma or Ethan is permanently barred from inheriting or benefiting from her estate. That's legal, that's final. That's why tonight isn't a negotiation, it's a notification. The LED wall changed to the relevant section of the will, gold seals blazing like little suns. Article 6, Section 4. Permanent exclusion of abandoning parties. A hush as clean as snowfall fell across the room. My mother grabbed the mic from a nearby table, voice tearing. "We forgive Emma," she cried, that polished sob she uses for charity luncheons. "We just want our grandson." A murmur rippled, some pity, some revulsion, everyone watching the ground shift under their heels. Ethan's gaze softened, not toward her, but toward the room. "I'm not a prize you get for pretending to be sorry on television." Daniel raised one hand and the ballroom obeyed like a classroom that respects the teacher. "For the avoidance of doubt," he said, "we served notice of protective orders earlier this afternoon, pre-filed. If contact continues after this event, we will finalize restraining orders and pursue criminal harassment charges. No more flowers, no more press. No more ambushes in hospital lobbies." As if choreographed by a universe with impeccable timing, the ballroom doors opened. Two uniformed officers stepped in with a process server between them, neutral as a metronome. "Charles Carter, Catherine Carter, Ryan Blake," the server called. 3 packets landed where 3 people used to feel untouchable. Murmurs rose like steam. A donor at the back actually clapped once, then covered it with a cough. My father looked at the document like it might bite. My mother sat down slowly, shaking so hard the pearls in her ears trembled. Ryan stared at his packet, then at the camera, then at the floor, realizing too late that shame is heavier than debt. For a beat, nothing moved. Then Daniel checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. We'll give you 10 minutes to clear this venue peacefully. He turned to the crowd, to history, to me. That seems fair. 10 minutes. The number that had defined my life. I felt the symmetry settle into my bones like warmth after winter. But this wasn't just about exile. It was about what we were building in the space they left behind. Ethan stepped forward again, shoulders square. While this unfolds, he said, nodding to the officers, I want to tell you why we're really here. The LED wall bloomed with an architectural rendering, glass and brick and light. Letters along the facade reading, the Victoria Moore Center for Young Mothers. A sound rose from the room that wasn't applause yet. It was the sound hope makes when it remembers itself. In honor of the woman who chose us, Ethan said, we're launching a center that offers safe housing, childcare, tutoring, legal aid, and medical scholarships. Because no girl should ever sleep on a park bench for telling the truth about her life. The applause started then, swelling like tide, but Ethan lifted a hand and it softened, reverent. We're starting with $5 million in initial funding, he continued. 10 full medical scholarships for children of teen mothers, 20 apartments, on-site childcare during night classes, and a promise. If you ask for help, we say yes before we say why. A young woman near the back gasped. When the spotlight caught her, she held a baby tight and pressed her lips to his hair, like she was reminding herself that tomorrow exists. Daniel returned to the mic, voice steadier than the marble under our feet. We're also announcing that several donors, his eyes found the board members, who looked suddenly lighter, have redirected annual contributions to seed the center, because family values mean nothing unless they value families as they are. At table 1, my father shoved his chair back. We're not leaving, he hissed through clenched teeth. We'll fight! The officer's voice was quiet and unbothered. Sir, you have 6 minutes to exit before you're in violation. Don't make us turn this into paperwork. My mother stood, smoothing a dress that couldn't smooth her history. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time in 2 decades. There used to be power in her gaze. Tonight, there was only distance. You'll regret this, she whispered. I shook my head. I regretted you for 20 years. I'm done. Ryan tried for dignity and found the opposite. Ethan, please. Ethan nodded to the officers. He's with them. They began to move, a small procession of consequences. Phones tracked them, not with cruelty, but with relief. Everyone in that room had seen a version of this story up close. A parent who chose image over love. A man who left because it was cheaper. Justice doesn't feel like punishment when you've been waiting this long. It feels like balance. When the doors closed behind them, the applause didn't explode. It rose, a standing ovation that started at the edges and rolled inward like night giving way to morning. I felt the wave hit and didn't drown. I floated. Ethan took my hand. Daniel took the other. The 3 of us stood there, tethered, while 100 cameras tried to make sense of a simple truth. We had not destroyed a family. We had revealed one. The MC reappeared, eyes shining. I think Dr. Carter has one more announcement. Ethan smiled, that half smile he wears when something matters. Our first scholarship recipient is here tonight. Marisol Alvarez, valedictorian at Northside Prep, mother to Sophia, who turns 1 next month. He looked toward the back. Marisol, will you stand? She rose, cheeks wet, baby on her hip. The room became a cathedral. No religion, just reverence. Daniel leaned to the mic. And one last note. While I'm a man who loves silence almost as much as justice, I want to say this out loud so nobody misses it. If you are that 17-year-old tonight, if you're sleeping in a car, if your family made your life smaller because your belly grew, call us. Tomorrow will be different. We built it for you. That's when I took the microphone. I hadn't planned to, but sometimes the body knows the speech the mind is afraid to write. When I was 17, I said, I thought 10 minutes could end a life. I was wrong. 10 minutes can also begin one. My voice shook, and then it didn't. A woman in a gray coat found me and decided I was worth the trouble. She became my mother. My son became my miracle. And a man who arrived last, Daniel, became the proof that love isn't a moment, it's a habit. Laughter through tears. The best kind. I looked straight into the nearest camera. To anyone who thinks DNA is destiny, it's not. Destiny is who shows up. I was about to hand the mic back when the ballroom doors opened again. For a heartbeat, the room seized. But it wasn't police this time. It was the foundation coordinator, eyes bright, carrying a slim folder. She hurried to the stage and whispered to Ethan, who smiled and nodded. He returned to the mic. We just received our first anonymous match, another $5 million to mirror our seed funding. He looked at the ceiling like he could see through it. Grandma, if you're listening, we're doing it exactly how you would. The ovation shook the walls. Afterward, while the band found a gentle rhythm and the waiters rediscovered their choreography, people approached in waves, donors, nurses, former patients, kids with messy hair and tired parents. They didn't ask for photos. They said thank you the way you say it when it costs something to say it. In the lull, Daniel tugged my sleeve. Come, he said softly. We slipped through a side door into a corridor that smelled like fresh paint and old secrets. He handed me a small velvet box, the color of midnight after a storm. My heart stuttered. He shook his head, smiling. No speeches, not tonight, just this. Inside was a simple ring, one that looked like forever without shouting about it. He didn't go down on one knee. He didn't need to. Emma Carter, he said. You don't need permission anymore, but I'd be honored if you'd wear my name where I wear your faith. I laughed, then cried, then did what I'd promised myself I'd do when the noise was over. I chose joy. Yes, I said. Before you finish the sentence, yes. We returned to the ballroom and found Ethan alone at the podium, reading the flood of texts from residents who'd watched the live stream between patient rounds. He looked up, saw the ring glint, and grinned like a kid who just won an argument with gravity. About time, he said. Watch it, doctor, Daniel murmured, mock stern. I still know your social security number. Ethan half-hugged us both, then leaned into the mic for the last words of the night. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, the Victoria Moore Center opens in 6 months. If you want to help, we'll put your money to work. If you need help, we'll put our arms around you. Either way, welcome home. The band swelled. People danced the way relief makes bodies remember rhythm. Cameras packed up without hunger. Outside, the city kept its own beat. Chicago always does. On our way out, we passed a TV in the lobby replaying the live stream on a loop. The chyron read, Heart Surgeon Honors Grandmother, Launches Center for Young Mothers. No mention of my parents. The story had found its protagonist. We stepped into the winter air. It tasted clean. Across the street, beyond the glass, I could see Table 1. Empty plates, abandoned programs, 3 chairs pulled back like they'd been taken by tide. I thought of that number 1 last time and let it go. 10 minutes had ended, 10 minutes had begun, and no one could put their hand on that clock again. Daniel slid his arm around me. Ethan tucked his hand into my coat pocket like he did when he was small. We walked to the car as if we'd always walked like this. 3 shadows, 1 shape. At the curb, Ethan paused. Mom? He nodded toward the ballroom. You did it. I shook my head. We did. He smiled. Grandma did. Yeah, I said, looking at the glowing windows. Grandma did. We drove away while the city glittered behind us, not as a backdrop, but as a witness. Tomorrow would bring headlines and think pieces and board meetings. It might bring subpoenas and apologies we didn't need. It would definitely bring work. But tonight brought truth. And truth, spoken in public, is a door that only opens one way. We didn't close it. We walked through. The next morning, Chicago felt quieter. The headline spoke louder than any apology could. Heart surgeon honors grandmother, family legacy redefined. Not a single mention of my parents. When I walked into Moore's on Michigan Avenue, the staff greeted me differently. Not like a boss, but like someone who had survived something sacred. Customers left notes on napkins. For Victoria. For every girl who was told she ruined her life. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel like a scandal. I felt like a story worth telling. Ethan came down the stairs in jeans and a hoodie, hair still messy from sleep. He poured coffee into the same mug Victoria used to use and said, "Mom, we really did it." I smiled. "No, you did it." He shook his head. "Grandma did." We both laughed. Soft, tired, healing laughter. The kind that means, we made it through the fire, and it didn't burn us this time. Daniel walked in holding the morning papers, still in his black suit from last night. He looked at me the way he always does when he's both proud and protective, like the world finally caught up to what he already knew. "They can't touch us now," he said, setting the paper down. "They never could," I replied. "They just made me forget." He smiled and reached into his pocket. Inside was a small velvet box, the same one from the gala. "I know last night was chaos," he said softly, "but the question still stands." I opened it again, the light catching the ring like a secret that finally wanted to be seen. I didn't even let him finish. "Yes," I said, laughing through tears. "Still yes." 3 months later, construction began on the Victoria Moore Center for Young Mothers. Ethan oversaw the medical wing himself. Daniel handled the legal foundations and trust. And me? I handled the heart of it. The kitchen, the nursery, the walls painted in soft colors Victoria would have loved. Every week, we got letters from girls across the country. My parents kicked me out. "I'm scared, but I want to be like her. Thank you for proving we're not mistakes." Each letter reminded me of that park bench, that gray coat, that morning when a stranger decided I was worth saving. 6 months after the gala, we hosted the grand opening. Reporters, photographers, former patients, teen mothers holding babies with names like Hope and Faith. The entrance shimmered under the sign, the Victoria Moore Center, because everyone deserves a second chance. I cut the ribbon with Ethan and Daniel beside me, and when the applause faded, I whispered, "We did it, Victoria." Somewhere in the wind, I swear I could feel her smile. That night, I sat alone in the courtyard of the center, watching the city lights flicker over the river. The same skyline that once made me feel invisible now glowed like home. I thought of my parents, of what pride cost them. I didn't hate them anymore. I just didn't need them. Forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. Or for the 17-year-old girl who once thought 10 minutes could erase her life. Ethan joined me outside, draping his jacket over my shoulders. "You ever think about what would have happened if Grandma hadn't found you?" he asked. "Every day," I said, "and every day I thank her, and this city, for the second chance." He smiled, looking out at the skyline. "Then maybe that's the real legacy. Not what we inherit, but what we pass on." I nodded. "Exactly." Before we left, I turned back toward the building. The golden lights spelled Victoria Moore Center against the night sky. Below it, a smaller plaque read, "Founded by Emma Carter and Dr. Ethan Carter, in honor of love chosen, not given." I took a deep breath, feeling the city hum beneath me. The world hadn't ended when my parents closed their door. It had just begun somewhere else. Sometimes I still walk through Grant Park, where Victoria first found me. I sit on that same bench, now engraved with her name. Teen moms walk past with strollers. I smile at them. They smile back, like they know. 20 years ago, I was a mistake trying to survive. Today, I'm a mother, a builder, a woman who finally learned that blood makes you related, but love makes you family. And when I stand, I whisper the same words Victoria once told me. Everyone deserves a second chance. Then I walk home, to the life I built, to the family I chose, and to the future that finally feels like mine. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. And if you believe that family is about love, not blood, subscribe for more true stories of courage, redemption, and justice. Your support keeps these voices alive.